If someone told you about a 9-year-old boy who worked in the sand mines of Cameroon, years later crossed the deadly Sahara Desert and multiple African countries to get to Spain in a $50 inflatable boat and eventually became the heavyweight champion of the world, you would likely assume they were talking about a movie they saw over the weekend. The story we're about to tell is not one from a movie though. It happened, and it is the real-life story of the former UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou.
Nice counter right from the entrance. Who's now down and out? Francis Ngannou can finally call himself the greatest heavyweight in the world.
Born in 1986 in Bati, a small village in Cameroon, Francis Ngannou grew up in extreme poverty. After his parents divorced when he was 6, he began working in a local sand quarry to help support his family. The economic hardships made pursuing an education or childhood dreams seem impossible. Ngannou often felt frustrated watching other kids enjoy school vacations while he worked tirelessly to afford basic needs like books or school fees. He started working in a sand mine at 9 years old, but Ngannou still couldn't afford basic school supplies like pens or notebooks. Sometimes he didn't even have shoes or proper clothes. Teachers misunderstood his lack of supplies, assuming he was irresponsible or careless. As a result, he was often kicked out of class. Yet Ngannou turned his anger and frustration into motivation. He worked even harder, determined to change his circumstances. Ngannou's middle school was about 6 miles from his home, requiring a 2-hour walk each way. Before school, he would work for 40 minutes, often without breakfast. By midday, he would be so hungry that he sometimes had to leave school because he lacked the energy to continue. In Cameroon, summer means 3 months of heavy rain. Adults avoided working in the sand mines during the rainy season due to terrible conditions, making it an opportunity for children like Ngannou to earn more money. He would come home shivering after working all day in the cold rain. He had to keep moving while working to stay warm, which ironically pleased his employer since it meant more work was done. By the age of 13, Ngannou knew he had to escape poverty, and boxing was his path out. However, there were no training opportunities where he lived. Another one of the driving reasons he wanted to leave Cameroon was the death of his father, who passed away because they couldn't afford hospital care. Watching his father die at home, Ngannou realized that if his mother ever got sick, he wouldn't be able to help her either. He knew something had to change. Leaving wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. He left some money with his little sister before embarking on his journey, uncertain if he would survive but knowing he had to try. In his early 20s, Ngannou began training in boxing. However, the lack of opportunities in Cameroon led him to make the dangerous journey across Africa to Europe in search of a better future. In 2012, when Ngannou was 26, he decided to leave Cameroon to follow his dream of becoming a professional boxer. His journey to Europe was very dangerous and took just over a year. He traveled through several African countries, including Nigeria, Niger, Algeria, and Morocco. Often traveling on foot, Ngannou faced tough conditions like sandstorms, extreme heat, dehydration, and hunger, especially during the challenging Sahara Desert crossing. He even once found a water well where the water was extremely dirty and contained dead birds, but Francis was so thirsty that he drank it anyway, using his t-shirt as a filter. He also had to deal with border patrol and police, who often took bribes. They took anything of value, so Francis often had to hide his money by wrapping it in plastic and swallowing it. Once in Algeria, Francis had to change his identity. He bought a fake passport that said he was from Mali because Algeria had a good relationship with Mali, which made it easier for him to move around. He was constantly being checked by the police, who were skeptical of everyone. He managed to stay calm and confident enough to pass these checks, but he was terrified inside. There were moments where he questioned what he was doing, but there was no turning back. He had to keep going. Keep in mind that this was just a few weeks into what would become a 14-month journey. As Francis said, that was only a warm-up. When Francis got to Morocco, things became even more difficult. He still finds it hard to believe that he endured all of it. In his words, Morocco is a nightmare for immigrants because it's the closest country to Europe. He felt it was akin to the final boss in a video game. It was the hardest part of his real-life journey. Francis tried to cross into the Spanish territory of Melilla, which borders the Mediterranean coast and Morocco. From there, he would be able to seek asylum, but it is protected by massive gates covered with sharp barbed wire, stretching over 10 feet high, designed to stop illegal immigration. He injured himself badly on the barbed wire after several attempts to cross over, and eventually had to go to the hospital for stitches to avoid dying from his injuries. Francis commented that it nearly took my stomach out the first time I got stuck stuck in it. Francis stayed in Morocco for a year during his several attempts to flee Africa, living in forests and deserts. He survived by eating from trash cans and even fighting rats for scraps of food. Despite all of this, he never gave up. He decided that trying to cross the barbed wire fence wasn't an option, so Ngannou and others tried escaping by sea. Crossing the Mediterranean Sea to Spain was dangerous and complicated because of radars, motion detectors, and infrared surveillance. Their ocean escape attempts were often made using an inflatable pool as a boat. Francis and the others wore life vests, but they never succeeded. Fishermen would often catch them and alert the border patrol. During one attempt, Francis was trusted as the boat captain, even though he didn't know how to swim. He tried to cross when the Moroccans were praying, but they would patrol as soon as they finished. After rowing for 3 hours, Francis and the others thought they had made it. They could see land on the other side and had already passed the international line, so he called a Red Cross, but a massive Moroccan army ship blocked their way. Although they were in Spanish waters and should have been left alone, the Moroccans intervened. The ship stalled them for 30 minutes until the Moroccans arrived to take him and the others back. Francis was thrown back into the desert again in December 2012. This was the closest attempt at escaping. He was so close to freedom, but pulled back into what he described as hell. With each failure, Francis grew less afraid and more willing to take risks. He finally succeeded on his 7th attempt to escape by water. It was April 3rd, 2013. They wrapped aluminum foil around the boat to block the radars, a trick they'd learned from a military man they'd befriended. The man admitted he had seen them trying to escape before they even got on the water, but waited to catch them. The military man was compassionate and gave Francis and the others tips to help them escape. He said, "I don't want to catch you, but I have to. It's my job." Through these repeated failures, Francis gained valuable knowledge and experience. 9 men were involved in his final escape attempt. This time, when they crossed into international waters, Francis sent out a rescue call and the Red Cross came to their aid. The group threw their passports into the water to avoid being deported. The Red Cross brought them to Spain, where he was promptly brought to a detention center for 2 months for entering the country illegally. The conditions were terrible: cramped cells, limited food, and no privacy. They controlled everything. When Francis and the others could shower, eat, and sleep. But he knew that after 2 months, he would be released to a foundation that helps African refugees. He left Spain, and on June 9, 2013, Francis arrived in France, hoping to start his boxing journey. But he faced many challenges, including homelessness and uncertainty about how to pursue his dreams. During this time, he met Fernand Lopez, a coach at MMA Factory in Paris, who saw Ngannou's potential and offered him a chance to train in MMA. At first, Francis didn't want to do MMA, preferring to focus on boxing, but he realized it made more sense because he was struggling financially, and it was hard to get boxing matches, while conversely, it was much easier to get MMA fights as a rookie. With Lopez's guidance, he slowly began to learn about MMA, like grappling and wrestling, and saw how his physical abilities could fit the sport. Despite his reluctant start, Ngannou's talent and hard work quickly stood out. He had no formal MMA experience, but his physical gifts and dedication caught the attention of everyone at the gym. Coaches Fernand Lopez and Didier Carmon even allowed him to train for free, which laid the foundation for his future success. Ngannou made his MMA debut in 2013, marking the beginning of his rise to stardom. By December 2015, Ngannou had earned a contract with the UFC, starting the Predator's journey to become one of the most feared heavyweights in the world. Ngannou made his UFC debut by defeating Luis Enrique by knockout in the 2nd round, which began his rapid rise in the heavyweight division. He continued his dominance in 2016, earning victories over Curtis Blades, Bojan Mihailovic, and Anthony Hamilton, showcasing his knockout power, and earning his first UFC Performance of the Night bonus. Ngannou faced his first big test in January 2017 when he fought former heavyweight champion Andrei Arlovski at UFC on Fox 23. He won with a first-round TKO, proving himself as a top contender.
Oh! Ngannou knocks Arlovski down! That is it!
In December 2017, at UFC 218, Ngannou delivered a memorable knockout against Alistair Overeem with a brutal uppercut, which earned him the Knockout of the Year and brought him widespread attention.
Try to get a matchup with Ngannou! Down goes the Reem!
This win also earned him a title shot. Ngannou holds the record for the hardest punch ever measured. His record-breaking punch was measured in 2017 using a machine called a power cube, which assesses the power of strikes based on force, speed, and accuracy. During the promotional event, his punch registered over 129,000 units, equivalent to the impact of a speeding car. UFC President Dana White even described it as,
which is equal to getting hit by a Ford Escort going as fast as it can.
This raw power became a defining trait in Ngannou's UFC career. In January 2018, Ngannou faced Stipe Miocic for the UFC Heavyweight Championship at UFC 220. Despite his fearsome reputation, Ngannou was outclassed by Miocic, using via unanimous decision after 5 rounds. Miocic's superior wrestling and endurance exposed some weaknesses in Ngannou's ground game and conditioning, which ultimately neutralized his striking power. Following this loss, Ngannou suffered another setback in July 2018 when he faced Derek Lewis at UFC 226. The fight was heavily criticized for its lack of action, with both fighters being hesitant to engage, and Ngannou lost by unanimous decision. This period marked a turning point in Ngannou's career as he acknowledged the mental and strategic challenges he had to overcome. After his loss to Lewis, Ngannou made adjustments to his approach and went on a knockout spree, defeating Curtis Blaydes again, Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik, all in the first round. On May 9, 2020, Ngannou delivered a 20-second knockout against Jairzinho Rozenstruik at UFC 249.
It's over. Rozenstruik is out. Whoa. Ngannou out.
Setting the record for the fastest knockout in UFC heavyweight history. Ngannou's persistence paid off when he earned another title shot against Stipe Miocic at UFC 260 in March 2021. This time, Ngannou showcased improved takedown defense and composure, knocking out Miocic in the second round to claim the UFC Heavyweight Championship.
Nice counter right from Miocic, who is now down and out. Francis Ngannou can finally call himself the greatest heavyweight in the world.
This victory avenged his earlier loss to Miocic in 2018. It marked the culmination of a long and arduous journey to the top of the sport, establishing Ngannou as one of the greatest heavyweights in UFC history. Ngannou defended his title against Cyril Gane at UFC 270 in January 2022, showcasing his improved wrestling skills and winning a unanimous decision. This victory demonstrated his ability to effectively use grappling, a significant improvement from earlier in his career, and highlighted his evolution into a more complete fighter. During his reign in the UFC, Ngannou and 2 other African UFC fighters were also enjoying success. Ngannou from Cameroon held the UFC heavyweight title, while Kamaru Usman and Israel Adesanya, both from Nigeria, held the welterweight and middleweight titles respectively. Their simultaneous reigns were a historic moment in MMA, as it marked the first time that 3 African-born fighters held UFC titles at the same time. This period, which occurred between 2019 and 2022, saw these fighters rise to global prominence while maintaining a close-knit friendship and support system for one another. They were nicknamed 3 African Kings, which refers to the unique bond and shared success of 3 UFC champions who represented Africa on the global stage. This title highlights not only their athletic prowess, but also their deep connection to their heritage and their role in elevating the sport's profile on the continent. Adesanya has frequently emphasized that even though they may lose titles or face challenges, their legacy transcends belts and championships. Their journey inspired a wave of new MMA talent emerging from Africa, with all 3 frequently voicing their pride in representing the continent. While 2022 marked the end of their reigns, with Usman and Adesanya losing their titles and Ngannou parting ways with the UFC over contract disputes, their impact remains. Dana White acknowledged the explosion of MMA interest in Africa, attributing it to their success. When he left the UFC, Adesanya publicly supported Ngannou, celebrating their shared journey as African champions. Their bond and the 3 Kings title represent much more than just MMA champions. It's about trailblazing, unity, and the pride of their African heritage. Ngannou's UFC career is notable not just for his knockout power, but for his perseverance, evolving skill set, and determination to reach the pinnacle of the sport. He is tied for the record of most knockout victories in the UFC heavyweight division, with 12 of his 17 UFC wins coming via knockout. His finishing ability became a signature aspect of his dominance in the octagon. Francis Ngannou left the UFC in early 2023 due to disagreements over his contract. Although the UFC offered him a deal that could have made him the highest paid heavyweight, Ngannou wanted more independence, fighter rights, and the freedom to pursue boxing, terms that UFC president Dana White did not agree to. Ngannou was frustrated because he felt the UFC wasn't addressing his concerns beyond financial compensation. He valued his freedom more than money, which led him to decline the UFC's offer and give up his heavyweight title. This decision sent shockwaves through the MMA world, world. Ngannou often said that leaving the UFC wasn't just about himself, it was also about the rights of all fighters. He knew that the UFC might not meet his demands, but he wanted to take a stand for more independence and fairness in the sport. After leaving the UFC, Ngannou began a new chapter of his career by signing with the PFL in May 2023. This move gave him the freedom to continue his MMA career while also chasing his dream of boxing. In October 2023, Ngannou had his first big boxing match against Tyson Fury, the WBC Heavyweight Champion. Many people thought Ngannou didn't stand a chance, but he surprised everyone by knocking Fury down in the third round and lasting the entire fight. Although Fury won by a close decision, Ngannou earned a lot of respect in the boxing world. This fight was a major milestone in his career, as it fulfilled his childhood dream of boxing at the highest level. Ngannou continued his career in the PFL, signing a contract that also made him the chairman of PFL Africa, allowing him to help grow MMA in Africa. In April 2024, Ngannou faced a heartbreaking tragedy when his 15-month-old son Kobe passed away. Francis had always kept his personal life private, but he shared that his son had an undiagnosed brain condition that led to his sudden death. Despite seeking medical care in both Cameroon and Saudi Arabia, nothing could be done. This loss was devastating for Ngannou, but he found strength in Kobe's memory, using it as motivation to keep moving forward in his career. Ngannou made a triumphant return to MMA at the PFL Battle of the Giants event held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on October 19, 2024. This fight marked his first MMA bout since leaving the UFC and after dabbling in boxing. His opponent, Renan Ferreira, was the 2023 PFL Heavyweight Champion, making this a highly anticipated clash of titans. Ngannou, known for his devastating knockout power, wasted no time in asserting his dominance. The fight started with both fighters measuring each other, but Ngannou quickly shifted the momentum. He secured a takedown within the first 3 minutes of the fight and unleashed a barrage of ground and pound strikes. His relentless power left Ferreira unable to defend himself, prompting the referee to step in and stop the fight. Awarding Ngannou a TKO victory in the first round. This victory was very important for Ngannou, not just professionally but emotionally as well. After the fight, he dedicated the win to his son Kobe.
I don't know, I can just think about anything than my son Kobe, I only take this fight because of him. I wanted to fight for him.
Ngannou revealed that he had considered retiring from fighting due to the emotional toll of his son's death, but ultimately decided to continue, crediting his son as his motivation. This victory in the PFL solidified his status as one of the most dangerous heavyweights in the world. Although he remained non-committal about whether his next fight would be in MMA or boxing, it was clear that he still has ambitions in both sports. As of 2024, Ngannou's net worth is estimated to be about $25 million, a huge change from his humble beginnings in Cameroon. Most of Ngannou's wealth comes from his fighting career, including UFC matches and his boxing debut against Tyson Fury, where he earned about $10 million. He earns endorsements with brands like Gym King Fight Division and CBD Research Labs. He also invests in different businesses such as Pitos and his ownership in PFL Africa. Ngannou's current lifestyle reflects his hard work. He owns luxury cars like a Rolls-Royce Phantom and a Mercedes-Benz G63 AMG. He now invests in businesses and supports his family and community in Cameroon. Despite his wealth, Ngannou stays grounded and is involved in charity work, including building gyms in Cameroon to inspire young athletes. Francis Ngannou's story is one of great strength. From working in sand mines and being homeless to becoming one of the best fighters in the world, he has faced every challenge. He made a name for himself in both MMA and boxing, always standing up for what he believes in. His leadership in PFL Africa, drive to succeed, and love for his family make him a true champion. Despite his difficult family struggles growing up, his brothers are now business owners thanks to the help Francis provided. He also has a close bond with his mother, who still lives in Cameroon. Ngannou built her a new house so she could live comfortably. Ngannou says his success comes from wanting a better life for his family. Even though he faced many hardships, including hunger and homelessness, while trying to become a fighter in France, he kept pushing forward. His journey is about achieving his dreams and honoring those that he has lost. fighters, especially his son. Ngannou's journey from the sand mines of Cameroon to the dangerous trip across the Sahara Desert and the hell he endured for a year in Morocco before finally arriving in Europe and eventually becoming a UFC champion is nothing short of extraordinary. But as Ngannou continues to make history in combat sports, the question remains, what's next for the Predator? If you found Francis' story interesting, check out this video in which we discuss Charles Oliveira's difficult upbringing and his rise to the ranks of the UFC. See you there!